about me in the past. Okay, we have a good part of that. How many people have heard my radio spot? Okay, good. All right, well, I'll briefly go over my bio. Can't hear. I'll briefly go over my bio.
You can take it out, yeah.
You've got about 12 feet of cord.
All right, how's that? I'll briefly go over my bio, and then what I'll do is go over some of my positions, and then I'll open it up for questions. All right? As far as my bio, a little bit about me. I came, first off, I was born in a very small town in western Pennsylvania, and I tell everybody that that was my greatest experience of all, because I grew up with a family where my grandfather was a coal miner, my father was a railroad worker, my mother was a nurse. We grew up with very limited budget, as everybody can imagine, and I came from a very working class family. I was the first person to go to college in my family, out of my whole family. My dad lost his job at an early age. My dad lost his job when I was 8 years old. So we learned very quickly what it takes when it comes to a family unit and how you have to work together. And thank goodness I had a mother who was a working nurse who was able to provide for the family. Ultimately, those were great values and great learning experiences. I also can tell you that my first pair of jeans and a lot of my first clothing came from hand-me-downs from my neighbors, but that was okay, because that's the values and the life that I started with, which I realized that I was going to have to work hard and do what I could, but I also believed in America and the possibility of what America can bring if you work hard and you do the right things. So ultimately, I went to college, paid my way through college, no scholarships, no nothing. I had to work as a truck driver. I worked in a factory. At one point in time, I worked on a road crew. So for 4 years, I actually worked and went to college. I was able to get out in 3.5 years. And the reason I was able to get out in 3.5 years, I got an internship from a CPA firm in Pittsburgh, because I graduated with a degree in business administration with a concentration in accounting. So I went to Pittsburgh, worked for a CPA firm for 2.5 years, got my CPA, and spent 2.5 years in healthcare primarily. So when you hear my background, you hear a lot of it has to do with healthcare. That's because for 2.5 years as a CPA, I was considered the expert at the CPA firm. Moved to Wadsworth at an early age of 24 with my wife. Of course, I came first, and then we got married a few months later. We were engaged to be married, so I moved here first. And then I went back and got her and brought her to Wadsworth after we got married in October of '83. Started my own business at that time in the healthcare business. At that point in time, I had 2.5 years experience, primarily in nursing homes. And what I ended up doing then is acquiring a nursing home, and convincing a bank to lend me $265,000, bought my first nursing home, and I can tell you 18 years later, with a lot of hard work and the ability to create jobs and employ people, I sold my business in 2000. Now, a lot of people say, well, you got into business, because the history, when you look at me, some people say, you might even read the paper, I think John Bocherry at one point in time said, well, he's a millionaire. Problem is, what John Bocherry doesn't realize is I started from nothing. And I started with nothing when I started my business. But I worked hard, I believed in the American dream, and I was able to work with people, get some very good people around me, and build a business. At the same time, I was able to create a lot of jobs and employ a lot of people. So my background, again, from that standpoint is 27 years of building a business, creating jobs, and employing 2,500 people. That is one thing I will tell you that none of the other candidates that are running in this election can say they've done. And that's one thing that distinguishes me 100% from all the other candidates. I am the only candidate in this group that's running that has created a job, and I'm the only candidate that can say that I've balanced a budget in a business, I've employed a number of people, and I've literally been able to balance a budget at the city level too, because as I told you, I built this business and then in 2000 I sold it all. 1999 I was asked to run for president and council in the city of Wadsworth. I had no aspirations to be a politician. When I came out of my family values, I was always you go out, you get a job, you raise a family, if you're lucky, you build your own business. I mean, that wasn't even part of the blue-collar background that I came from in Pennsylvania. So no politics, wasn't even considered politics. But what happened was, we had a city that was a little bit distressed. We had some issues in our city with finances. We were running some deficits. And I said, let me consider it, but I'm not sure that I really want to run for politics. So I got asked several times, let's take some business background into the city of Wadsworth. I eventually agreed. Wasn't sure who I was running against. That's how much of an amateur politician I was, because normally you're going to find out who you're running against before you run. But I did jump into the race. I found out I was running against somebody who had won 7 consecutive terms and was in office for 14 years. So I realized that I had my work cut out for me. But like everything else I've done, I worked extremely hard, and I won that election by a very nice, very good margin. At the same time, I got to work with the city. I became the finance chair, which I didn't have to do as president of council. President of council's job was to run the city council. I became the chair of the finance committee. I ran the finance committee. I started to see what was going on with the city. I then determined that the best way to balance this budget was to run for mayor. I ran for mayor because my goal was to get in, get a job done, and be done. I moved in, I ran for mayor. I was elected under that platform. I worked 4 years with the goals of balancing the budget. I'm proud to say that when I left office 4 years later, I did not run again, that I had a balanced budget, and I actually left the city of Wadsworth with a surplus. And interesting enough, if I brought the current mayor down here today, she would tell you that the current city situation is probably best than most cities in the state right now, because we put good, solid business principles into government, which, by the way, is not going on today in Congress, and is not going on today in most cities and county governments. So we implemented those things, and it worked.